Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a global financial system that is, well, holding its breath. It feels like the whole thing is balanced on a razor's edge.
Seriously? On a razor's edge? I honestly don't think there's a better way to describe what's happening in the financial world right now. We're talking about this incredible, palpable tension where things could just tip dramatically in either direction. And the reason we're on that edge is because this isn't just one market at a tipping point. We're seeing two massive, historically linked sectors, the altcoin market and crypto and the Russell 2000 stock index, and they are both knocking on the door of their all-time highs. And get this, it took them almost 4 years to get back to this point, and they arrived on the exact same day. What are the odds?
So what's the catalyst? What's the thing that pushed us right up to this brink? Well, as it so often does, the answer comes from the U.S. Federal Reserve.
So on September 17th, the Fed finally did it. They did what the market has been holding its breath for months. They cut interest rates. Just 0.25%, but it was a huge pivot. I mean, this signals a potential whole new cycle of easing.
But, the devil's always in the details, right? Fed Chair Jerome Powell was super careful with his words. He called this a risk management cut. Now, that's not a celebratory term. It's a warning. It's the Fed saying, hey, we're worried about slowing job growth, even while inflation is just staying stubbornly high. And that combo, a stagnant economy plus high inflation, that's the classic recipe for stagflation. And believe me, that is the one scenario that gives central bankers nightmares.
So what happened next? Complete and utter chaos in the markets. It just showed how confused everyone was. You had the Dow Jones going up, but the big tech indexes, the Nasdaq and S&P 500, they went down. Gold shot up, getting close to record highs, while Bitcoin was just whipping around, going nowhere. It's a classic case of the first move is rarely the real move. The market just could not figure out, is this good news or is this bad news?
And all of this confusion has basically set the stage for a heavyweight fight. Two powerful, completely opposite stories for where we go from here. The bull versus the bear. So, after all that chaos, where do we go? That's the billion-dollar question for every single investor right now. Which path is the market going to take? Okay, let's look at the two paths. The bull case, it's pretty straightforward. Lower rates usually mean a weaker dollar, and that tends to push money into scarce things, like gold and, Bitcoin. And here's the kicker. This time, you've got the big boys, institutional giants like Goldman Sachs, buying up Bitcoin ETFs. That creates a kind of price floor that we've just never seen before. But the bear case is just as convincing and, frankly, a little scary. It warns about a correlation trap. See, Bitcoin has been acting a lot like a tech stock lately. So if the Nasdaq takes a nosedive, Bitcoin could fall even harder. And then there's that stagflation nightmare we talked about. If that happens, the Fed is trapped. They can't cut rates without stoking inflation, and that could just crush all risk assets.
So, if you had to bet, the odds seem to be leaning just slightly in favor of the bulls. The path of least resistance looks like it's up. But, and this is a huge but, the risks are very, very real. Volatility? Yeah, that's pretty much a guarantee. As always, risk management is everything.
Okay, let's zoom out. Because what if all this tension in the market, this gut feeling that something's just off, what if it isn't just about finance? What if it's a symptom of something much, much bigger? A massive global shift that some people are calling the decline of an empire. It all starts with the very glue that holds a society together, trust and communication. Think about it. The use of divisive words in the media, words like triggering or hurtful, has absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, up over 500% since 2010. And why? Well, it's a business model. Fear and anger get clicks, they drive engagement, and engagement makes money. But after years and years of this, society gets split right down the middle. We're seeing levels of internal conflict that are just off the charts. And this division, this splitting apart, it's not random. It actually fits a predictable historical pattern. The famous investor Ray Dalio calls it the long-term debt cycle. It goes like this. A new empire rises. It has a period of peace and prosperity. Then it overextends itself. Debt piles up, the gap between the rich and poor gets wider and wider, and then the internal conflict begins, and the empire starts its decline. Does that sound at all familiar?
You see, this kind of decline creates a power vacuum on the world stage. As trust in the old institutions starts to weaken, well, nature abhors a vacuum, a new order starts to form. And if you want a perfect, concrete example of this shift, just look at who showed up to a recent military parade in Beijing. You've got Russia, North Korea, Iran, Pakistan. I mean, the guest list literally reads like a who's who of the US sanctions list. This isn't subtle. This is a clear visual signal that a new axis is forming, a direct alternative to the old Western-led order.
Okay, so that's the massive global picture. But let's bring this all back down to earth. What is all this fragility, this division, this global shift? What does it actually mean for you and me?
Well, the economic reality for a lot of people is pretty stark. Let's talk about homeownership. Back in our parents' generation, the average house cost about 3 times the average salary. Today, it's more like 7 times. The dream of buying a home, especially on a single income, it just feels like it's slipping away for so many. It's creating a whole generation of renters, not owners. And that leads to a really dangerous place. As the saying goes, when people believe they've got nothing to lose, that's when societies collapse. Think about it. When a generation feels like they don't have a stake in the system, no property, no assets to protect, why would they fight to defend that system? This kind of economic pressure is the absolute fuel for social instability.
So it all comes down to this really fundamental question for all of us. When the old systems, the old paths to building a stable life, when they feel fragile, when they feel like they're breaking down, where do you turn? What do you do?
Well, in the world of finance, there's this term alpha. It's kind of a fancy word for outperforming the market, for finding an edge, some kind of skill that lets you do better than average, especially when times are tough. But when you think about everything we've just talked about, this search for an edge, this hunt for alpha, it starts to feel like something more, doesn't it? It's really a search for stability. It's a search for security in a world that just feels like it's changing faster than ever. And so here we are, right back on that razor's edge, not just in the markets, but in the world at large. As the world's economic and political order seems to be fraying at the edges, it leaves us with a question that's so much bigger than just what the market's going to do tomorrow. The real question is this: what does it truly mean to build wealth, to build security for yourself and your family in the future?